Welcome back to No Permission Necessary. My name is Molly Bierman, and I am here with my co-host Jill Griffin and a special guest today, Makhosi Nejeser. Makhosi Nejeser is the world's leading apex consciousness master, a fully initiated African shaman, philosopher, and leadership advisor. She possesses an undeniable ability to awaken the world's highest achievers from the sleepwalk of success. The Royal Shaman leads those who are willing on an intensely satisfying journey to the final frontier of limitless potential, timeless flow, and spiritual authenticity. Welcome, Makhosi. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to see what comes up today.
Us too.
I am too. I'm so excited that you're here. I asked you to be on here because most people probably don't know this, but I found you probably during COVID as online at the Royal Shaman on Instagram and got really interested in the content you were putting out. A lot of stuff around leadership, but also this spiritual side of leadership and running business and stepping into your feminine. And that really attracted me. I know Molly and I have had a lot of conversations around how we show up as leaders and how that's different as a woman leading a business versus a man and being in a male dominated industry where there's a lot of male leaders in our industry and how we fit ourselves into that. So I was really happy to have you on because you have such a unique perspective that's changed my leadership style. And so let's talk about a little bit your name, the Royal Shaman, and your story, because you have a fascinating story and background how you came to be.
Yeah, my story's really been a lifetime of very interesting unfolding. So on one side, I feel like I was almost living two lives. So most of my childhood, I had this very like more mystical, spiritual side to myself. One of my first businesses was reading tarot in middle school to other kids trying to make some funds. Um, but also, I had this other side of me that was very goal oriented and high achieving. And I think that that part really came about because I grew up in small town, Southern West Virginia. I am biracial, and my mom was a single teen mom. So, from a really young age, I had this idea of like, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm going to make something of myself by any means necessary. And I have no hand eye coordination. So I knew it wasn't going to be sports. And so I'm like, well, I have a pretty good brain. So I'm going to work that.
There you
Well,
go. There you go.
yeah, got to use I'm like, this I can work with.
Yeah.
So fast forward through college, and I ended up thinking like I'm going to go to med school because I had honestly no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted to prove everyone wrong. And when I say everyone, there was no one really that was like, you can't make it. It was just like these statistics that existed that became like my enemy that I
Yeah.
needed to prove something
They
to.
were written
Mhm.
for you, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the
Yeah.
script that I was supposed to follow. And I was
Sure.
like, forget that script.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up deciding in my very last year not to go to medical school. And that really came about from the birth of my son. And I saw him, just like beautiful bundle of boy. And I really struggled to get pregnant. And all I really wanted was to just be with him. And I could not imagine going to med school at that time. So I skipped med school. I ended up at Target, and then I ended up going the business route. I've always had some form of business going since I was really young. Well, I was very blessed to become extremely successful in a very short amount of time in my direct sales business. And when I had that experience, I realized like here I am, I was like 24, got the tall, dark, handsome husband, the beautiful son, the fancy designer bags, the, free trips to Vegas, the flights, I was living what everyone said should make you happy at 24. And I was like, wow, is this it?
Mm.
Mm.
So I had a like quarter life crisis at 24, 25 years old. And what was ignited in me was that other side of myself that I had mostly kept hidden, which was my more mystical side, but also very deep in psychology and how consciousness works and it took me on this journey of exploring like, who am I? What is our purpose here? Why do we exist? It can't be to, just get married, have the baby, and make the money. There has to be something deeper. And it was that quest that ultimately landed me in what is called a mystery school initiation. It is this school or this process of education that's really designed to help you deconstruct your programming from
Huh.
society and bring you back to your essence and the core of who you are. And it was a 5-year long journey, traveling back and forth to Africa. Ultimately, that landed me in South Africa, where I initiated to become what's called a Sangoma, which is a Zulu shaman. And they would probably now at this point in my evolution refer to me as what's called a Sanusi, more of the philosopher, societal healer, really also working with leadership in elevating the way that we do life and bringing a new paradigm to, in my case, I focus mostly on the business space and work with very visionary entrepreneurs who are really called to leave a different legacy, to, break those generational curses and create a new pathway forward for themselves, their families, and also transform their industry.
When you say shifting the paradigm, can you maybe break that down to the listeners who are maybe not as savvy in this arena and share
Yeah.
a little bit about what that means?
So all of us operate from a paradigm, both on an individual level and a collective level, like our society and humanity as a whole. So a paradigm is essentially the collection of systems, structures, beliefs, lenses on the world that shape how we see ourselves
Mm.
and also therefore shapes the decisions that we make. It shapes it touches everything.
Mhm.
So my work at the consciousness level or the paradigm level is really about addressing the root cause of so many of our challenges, so many of our issues. Like
Yeah.
I think anyone with two eyes would say we're not really living in harmony.
You think?
We're not in harmony, okay? Most of us
Y
aren't in harmony with ourselves,
Yeah.
in our relationships, in
The greater world? Yeah.
the greater world, like how
Yeah.
our relationship with time is weird.
Yeah.
So breaking down all of those systemic but also individual programming
Mhm.
that makes us think this is who I am, this is how things have to be, should be, need to be, and really questioning that and challenging it. And ultimately, what's birthed out of that or what emerges is what I call your essence, right? The essence is this true self, who you are really destined to be and
Yeah.
how you are destined to operate in this world, and then supporting people in building a business and a life that actually reflects who they're here to be.
I mean, I think it's interesting too because a lot of what I have learned through my own journey, my own growth, my own leadership style is that most women, when they're born, into this world, are raised with the idea of the Cinderella fairy tale, which you touched on right at the beginning, right? Is this all that it's supposed to be? Get married, find your Prince Charming, get married, have a kid, right? And then maybe work. And so deconstructing that belief when it is so ingrained in our society tends to be a really big shift for people, right? Where it just feels a bit more comfortable to kind of stay in it because it looks like everyone else is having the same experience. So, what I'm hearing from you is you're actually saying you can have all those things, right? From what I understand, and what you're sharing is that, you have a partner, you have a son, you have a career, you're educated, and you can still have a different type of experience that is rooted in your own spiritual journey and growth. And those two worlds can actually align, if I heard you accurately.
And not even just align. My perspective is that when it is aligned, when you actually allow for your business to be your spiritual practice, or
Mm.
your marriage to be a spiritual practice, or how you mother to be a spiritual practice, how you friend, right? When we actually make that integration in our life, that is when the most sometimes seemingly miraculous, but
Yeah.
absolutely incredible outcomes start to become real. And, I say it's almost like magic
Yeah.
happening in your everyday life.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about, that alignment with purpose and give some examples of what some signs of misalignment that you've seen working with leaders, maybe examples of your own life? But because I know some people are probably listening, like, hang on a second, like, how are these things in my life supposed to be spiritual?
Yeah.
I think Molly and I understand that, right? We can see parts of that, but I do think there's people listening that that's not clicking for them. They're
Yeah.
like, that's like a separate thing. My
And we may
spirituality is a
lose them.
separate thing.
Hang
Yeah.
on, guys. Just stay seated. Okay. Don't turn it off just yet. Okay.
So I think that, well, we have to address some root issues there. Number one, we think that what is spiritual is simply the things that we do in order to create or connect with the divine, right? We think go to church Sunday morning for this little bit of time. That's me being spiritual. And I would offer another perspective. And from a shamanic point of view, all of us carry a connection with the divine inside, and that our purpose is not something we're here to do, but it is who we're here to be as an expression of divine. Okay. So, what that means is every aspect of our life then gets to be a laboratory of experimentation
Mm.
where we are playing with what are all the different ways that I can express the divine from me, or where am I limiting myself in these spaces? What are the challenges, the issues, the blocks that are coming up in my life, and seeing those as opportunities to evolve more into who we are truly here to be. Now, that different perspective of purpose is so important because I had this turmoil when I was a kid, and maybe you all experienced this too. Purpose felt like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yes.
I was like, if there's literally infinite things that I could do, how am I supposed to find this one thing that I'm supposed to do out of this haystack of possibilities?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that can't be right. That can't even be what purpose is. And it meant that I could not be in purpose until I found that. And most likely, statistically, I have this little logic brain. I'm like, statistically, I'm never going to find my purpose.
I when you say that and this might get go a little, down a new inroad here, but when you say that you centered in here, and I'm pointing to my brain, guys, for those of you listening, not watching. For those, when you're centered in your logical mind and how to kind of get into your more aligned self, we'll say, your more spiritual side, do you find that there's a lot of barriers for you? I mean, obviously, you've been on this journey for a lot longer, but in the infancy stages, to allow that to be your barometer rather than what your head was telling you, what were some of the struggles there? Because I
Oh
think
my.
for women, you have this things like mom guilt, or you have, this idea of what you should be doing for your career, but also balancing that with a child. So, how did you find
The
listening
harmony.
to yeah, like the harmony, listening to yourself in all areas, not just your logic, because you sound like a very logical person in some ways?
Yeah. Um, I'm going to be so transparent. It was not an easy automatic thing
Yeah.
because in my life, and also our society glorifies logic.
Mm.
Oh, we
Our
want a reason for everything. We want the reason.
We want the reason, we want the data, we want the proof, we want, the thing that makes the most sense. And
Mhm.
because all of it's because, patriarchy, like we value men and the things associated with masculinity, at least what we think masculinity is, we value those things higher. So even us as women, we tend to overemphasize that aspect of us and find it more difficult sometimes to drop down into our body. But the ancient world and even indigenous systems, even now, hold the perspective that like the magic is in the body, that the body itself is a portal to this connection with the divine. It doesn't come through mind and the thought. It's why
Uh-huh.
dancing is such a huge component because it's a way that you can completely drop the ego, and it's very hard to think when you are, dancing very hard and you're in your body, right? I think I want to go to being able to tell the difference. So with a lot of my clients, I do what's called an energy audit. And the energy audit is a practice where you start to get in tune with what is happening in your energy as you are existing, as you are living, right? So most of us plan our day from our head.
Uh,
We think these are the things that I should get done. These are the things I have to get done to be a good mom, to be to go to the next level, blah, blah, blah. And we put those on our calendar. But the energy audit is all about being able to tap in and feel in your being what's happening with your energy as you are doing different tasks. And part of that is understanding that there are things that you do that you spend time on that give you life. Okay? That when you do them, you lose track of time. So time either slows down or it feels like it's speeding up or like it doesn't exist at all.
uh-huh.
That's a sign of probably some alignment there, flow, right?
And
And also, you notice that when you are doing the things that you are most aligned to, you get energy from them, right? Or you get a sense of peace, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of um, joy in the process, not because of some outcome, the, you know, 10,000 followers or, a job well done with 18 pieces of content made, right? It's actually while I'm in the process, while I'm in the journey, I am able to be present. I can feel the energy just flowing through me. And those are the things that we want to be doing more of. Okay. Those are the things that we need to strategize around. How do I make more of my life? Those things.
Right.
And also on the flip side, paying attention to, okay, what's draining your energy? I'll give you a real life example. For the longest time, I had so much judgment of myself around what I thought made a good mom, quote unquote. Okay. In my mind, a good mom made sure that her house was spotless clean all the time. And she did that herself. Okay. And I would spend every single week, I'm not kidding you, when I actually did the energy audit, I was spending between 6 and 8 hours a week cleaning. And every time I was cleaning, it was taking more energy to force myself. I was having to like make myself clean, and it would completely drain my energy. I would have nothing else to give. See, we think that energy is finite, that if I spend 6 hours doing this, that it's the same as 6 hours doing that. But it is not at
Hmm.
all. Because if you're doing 6 hours on the things that are really draining you and you're doing that all the time, your energy is being decreased and you don't have it to give an overflow to other areas. Whereas I know you've had this experience where if you spend, heck, 2 hours on something that's in flow, you can accomplish like 10 hours worth in that zone versus in the other, right? And so this is a process of becoming aware of your energy and then starting to realign how you are living, how you are doing business with who you are really, like who you actually were born to be.
I mean, that's made a huge difference in my practice because that's something that I've done, in some work with you and your containers, like doing that energy audit does make a difference when you sit down day by day, week by week, just checking in with yourself. How do I feel after this? Because I can tell you, and I've had these conversations with other people too around when I'm speaking or doing a training or, on a stage somewhere and there's people, you feel energized. It's like the time goes by like that. You don't, it's almost like you don't even, you're present, but then you don't also even remember being there because it goes by so quickly and you feel like lit up afterwards. I feel energized. I feel like, oh, I could do that again right now, no problem. Whereas somebody that there's probably other people that have the opposite experience where they come off, they have to go lay down for the rest of the day,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
that is not in flow with them. That's maybe not what they're supposed to be doing. And I what kind of came up when you were talking is this idea of something being good versus bad for you
Mm.
or good versus bad to society, to, you said what a good mother is, right? And I think we all have these ideas of what a good leader is. And there are some just objective things that could make you a bad leader or a good leader, right? That we could probably all agree on. But also, there's this part where if you're stepping into your purpose as a leader, as a business owner, there are things that I do very differently than Molly does, or that you would do, or that right? And it's tapping into what our own style is and our purpose. Because what I hear you say and what I've learned from you a lot is like my purpose in being a business owner may be different than Molly's. Even though we're in the same industry, even though we're both female owned on female entrepreneurs, like our purpose may still be different.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for most of us is that we have these very limited boxes of what a person should be, right?
Oh, that should.
That should, right? We're shoulding all over ourselves. Our idea of like a leader, we have to examine, where does that come from? And I'll tell you, most of our ideas about what makes a good leader are rooted in control, are rooted in disempowerment. Like if we're going to be, we got to talk about some uncomfortable things in this country. It's also rooted in like the enslavement of others. And I don't just mean Black people. I mean, in general, we have this perception of this hierarchy, and leadership is rooted in the control of the people who are below you in perception, right? And we have to be honest. Does that make for the most enjoyable, expansive, evolving environment? No. And we all have different styles. We all have different gifts, and the most important piece of it starts with you. The way that we change how we see value, like the value of what makes a leader, right, starts with individual people saying, this is how I lead, this is who I am. Maybe my style is really rooted in listening, right? Maybe I'm an introvert. I am technically an introvert. And my style is based in a lot of listening. Well, it starts with me valuing that trait, that way of being enough to be it, to express it, to build my teams around that, to, put systems in place that allow for me to be in my best in that way. And then more people get to experience that. But we're all basically like trying to be these very rigid boxes of, the definition of what we think something is. And often that's not even, those characteristics aren't even the most beneficial for the work that we're doing or for the relationships. Like my perspective, especially when it comes to leadership, is, and this is why I think I'm going to say something controversial. I think that women make the best leaders, because
We've said it too. Yeah.
Okay, well, um,
You're in
I
good company.
I think that women really do make, not all women, obviously, and I'm not saying anything against men who are great leaders, but often why women make the best leaders is because we are excellent at curating environments that allow for growth. And then that allows for people, our teams, our customers, et cetera, to be in their sovereignty, to choose what potential of theirs they want to grow versus us controlling them, saying, this is what I need you to be. We create the standard, we create the environment, and we invite them into that. But they still have the choice of whether they want to involve in that way or they want to do things in their own way, and on and on.
Well, I think you bring up a couple points that have been important to me in my life, which is that we tend to 100% put ourselves in these rigid boxes. So when we're building a business or we're going through a growth period or we're going through a transition, usually the number one factor that prevents anyone from taking the risk or trying something new or pivoting to a different direction is a level of fear, right? That's been my experience. And that fear tends to really become a snowball effect where it just keeps going and going. And now you've projected this really big belief of what's going to take place that started with a very like minute fear. But unfortunately, we tend to want these crystal balls, right? And we want to know exactly what it's going to turn out to be like and how the risk is going to end up and where I'm going to skin my knees or where I'm going to trip and fall. And so I think that leads me into the question for you, which is when we're building, when we're taking risk, when we're leaning into some level of discomfort, what would you say would be the biggest misconceptions that women have about their success and their fulfillment? Where are the pitfalls? Where have been your own pitfalls in that way? I think that would be really helpful for me to hear, and I think essentially others as well.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's so many that we could really dive into, but I think that one of the biggest issues that keeps women specifically, I mean, it holds the majority of women back from the fullest possibility, like how big they can really grow something, or um, the limits to how much they can be seen, and is it's going to sound so strange, but it is actually really connected to our fear of how we're going to be perceived and what it means for our relationships.
I don't think that sounds
I
strange.
don't think that sounds strange at all.
I think that's very accurate.
Yes.
Yes.
So for most of us, we're taught to see things in a really compartmental way where we think, oh, if I keep hitting the ceiling in my business, then it has to be a business issue. And we are not compartmental beings. We are holistic beings, and different aspects of our lives are affecting each other.
Mhm.
And for women specifically, so much of our identity, because of how we're programmed as little girls, is rooted in our relation to other people and how other people see us. Do they see me as greedy? I don't want to seem greedy. Oh, I don't want to seem high maintenance. I don't want to seem stuck up. That one was a big one for me. I don't want to seem stuck up. Or, oh, is my husband going to not want to be with me anymore because I'm making more money than him?
Mm.
Right.
Mm, that's
And
a real one.
Mhm. And it's
We've
becoming,
talked about that. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
real one.
it's a real one. It's a very, I'm not going to say it's not rooted in reality,
Right.
because for sure,
There's
as
some
you
data
are
out
making more
there.
money,
Mhm.
there's data like
Mhm.
divorces do increase. Men are really challenged with their own identity because their whole purpose and sense of identity is rooted on their ability to quote unquote provide, and that equals make more money to them. So these are not like made up things that are just happening in your mind. However, we also need to understand that we have the ability to approach things in a way that allows for us to experience what we want and also navigate those relationships that we either already have or that we want to have. But it does often boil down to navigating our ability to have our own identity.
How did that rub up in your own relationship?
Oh, my marriage almost ended.
Oh, oh,
My marriage almost ended. So let me
Okay.
be very clear.
Yeah.
I've been with my husband. We've been together since 2009. So,
Okay.
16 years together. But there was a period of probably 2 years in our marriage where I was like, I don't know if we're going to make it.
Mhm.
yeah.
Because when I stopped when I stopped centering him as the thing that gave me value, like being a wife as the thing that gave me value, or being a mother as the thing that gave me value, and started to find myself in other ways, that amount of change, just the change
Mhm.
itself, really made him afraid, because he's like, you're changing so quickly. I don't even know who you are. Who are you going to become? Are you changing in a direction that is, separate than me?
Uh,
And all of those were, very rooted in reality. I was changing. And change is the thing, like humans fear change
more
the
than
most.
anything.
More than
Right.
anything. Like we hate change, but it's the
Mhm.
one thing that is always happening.
Yeah,
Like
the
Mhm.
one constant is change.
it's
It's
happening
so
and we're
bizarre.
always afraid of it.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I was able to instead of focusing on who I thought I had to be in the relationship in order for the relationship to stay good, I started inviting him to share what he needed for himself and also from the relationship.
Mhm.
Okay. And I realized, at least for our relationship, I won't tell anyone else what to do with theirs, but um, he, despite how successful I was or how much money I made or whatever, there needed to be room for him in our relationship and in our home. We have often gone the other direction of like, I absolutely don't need you. I can do everything myself. And we don't leave room for a partner, right?
This is sounding so familiar right now.
Yeah.
Jill's out a week. She is out a week.
I'm
No, but
triggered.
that's a real thing. Like I have a girlfriend. I have a girlfriend who was really struggling in her relationship. And she started low key reading how to be a single mom on the side.
The friend is not me. I just want to say that. I just want to make that very clear. I have been very clear that single motherhood is not my purpose in life. I saved my husband's life so that didn't have to come true. I can't do this alone. I just want to put
But
that out there.
it's so true. Like there are these subtle moments where, and I'm being a little bit, you know, silly in that way. And there is a very clear distinction that the evolution of a woman and transforming from wanting the husband to getting the husband to having the kid to getting the career to all those changes, like we are different at every season of that life. We
Mhm.
change, right? And if we're not in community with our partners, male, female, whatever, that's, you know, irrespective of what we're talking about. But if we're not in community with our partners, I think the challenge is exactly what you said, Makhosi, which is there room for me? That's the question happening on the other side. And, you know, I think of the mindset, well, then you need to speak up, right? Like there's this level of like,
Same.
speak up and say that. And then what you're bringing me to is a little bit more softness about it because you are healed. Okay. We have someone who's healed on the show. It is not Jill or I, just to be clear. And I'm looking at you being like, oh, that sounds so inviting the way you just said that. I do not say it like that.
That approach never crossed my mind, actually.
So my perspective really, I love that you use the term community because we often don't think about our relationships in terms of community, and
Right.
but it is. And what actually makes a community work, whether it is your family, right? Like the people living in your home and also the people you are related to that maybe you interact with regularly. But also you can think of your team as a community, your actual community as a community, right? What makes the community work is that everyone has a place. Everyone has some sense of meaning in the group
Mhm.
or in the partnership. And when we go about like trying to fill all the gaps ourselves and not leaving room for the other person to be who they really are. And I'm saying it that way very specifically because I also don't prescribe the idea that like there's a specific role that the more masculine partner has to take, and that looks like taking out the trash and doesn't have to be that way, but it does require that the two people or the community be really honest about, you know, who am I here to be? What is it that I can bring? Like, for example,
Mhm.
in my relationship, I my husband is very risk averse.
Mm.
Okay. He is very like, I need consistent amount of money in the bank, consistent amount of money coming in every single month. Like, that's what I need. For me, I'm like, let's do big stuff,
Let's
right?
blow the doors off. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's make it happen, right? And so there are specific things with money, for example, that my husband will oversee. When it comes to like big investments, that's going to be something that I oversee in our relationship. And so I would also encourage you and or anyone else, like when you know someone, you often know them, right? Like, yes, we want to be in communication and we want them to speak up and. Um, I always come back to this example of whenever my son was younger, my husband was traveling a lot and he's in construction. So he's an electrical contractor and he would be gone for, a week, 2 weeks at a time. And every time he would come home, there would be a little list of, little projects that were existing at home, that honey-do list. And he would look at the honey-do list, and one time he goes, "Listen, I know that you actually," like, my mom was a single mom, so I knew how to do a lot. She taught me a lot. He's like, "I know that you know how to do this stuff. So why is it that you're assigning it to me?" And I was like, "Listen, you are watching me like take care of everything at home. I'm like meal prepping so that he would have food to go out of state. Like I'm homeschooling, I'm running my business, I'm like doing all the things." And I was like, and I want you to know that there is room for you at home, that there is something here that is space for you, that we need you here. And he goes, "Oh." So it wasn't about me like forcing or nagging or making him do any of those things, but it was a demonstration in like, yeah, I can do a lot,
Uh-huh.
but
You're
Uh-huh.
part of this community.
I yeah, I didn't sign up to just be babysitting a partner like that doesn't contribute anything other than money and you know what.
I think it's really true, even when we build teams, right? When we think about building like a business, okay? And currently in the climate that you know, I'm in a what I would say is still a startup new business that, gratefully is doing extremely well. And the people that tend to want to work with us, essentially be in our ether, be in our community, they bring when I'm having a conversation with them, I'm asking, what is your most passionate qualities, right? What do you want, what type of client do you want to work with? Because we're people facing, right? And so what we find is that they really enjoy working with us because they're doing what they're passionate about. So my biggest takeaway when you were just sharing about your relationship is maybe having conversation with your significant other, your boss, your coworkers, whoever it is in your community, and start to kind of share, well, what is it that you're passionate about that you want to do, right? Even going down to, no, do people want to take out the trash? No, I don't think anyone feels passionate about that. But there may be one person who feels more, oh, I feel fine about it. And the other person feels like, no, there's no way I really want to do that. I'd rather do X, right? And so what you just showed was this paradigm shift. And I think that goes back to the initial, part of the podcast, which is when we're looking at a moment in time, how are we showing up and inviting that conversation in with the other person and acknowledging the time and space that they want to dedicate to, right? And if we're not acknowledging that in the workspace, we're definitely not acknowledging that at home because home feels very built in. It feels very consistent. It feels like we can not tend to it and it will still be there. Let's be honest. And when we start to really maybe tend to that area or tend to the area of the business, what happens is just like you said, there's that alignment, there's that freedom, there's that energy shift where it doesn't feel as grueling. and as much of a chore.
Yeah. I'll also just add, the one of the biggest mistakes that I see women make is, we never want to be a bother. We don't want to be a bother. We don't want to, we want people to know that we're grateful. So one of the biggest mistakes I see that women make in this exact context is they look at all of the things that they find enjoyable in the business, and those are the things that they give away. Those are the things
Ah,
that they're like,
Mm.
interesting.
yeah, they go, "Oh, well, no one would wanna take out the trash, so I'm just gonna do it." Right? But in the
Mhm.
business, no one would want to answer the phones, so I'm just gonna do it. And then they end up in the business giving away all of the things that actually gave them energy, and before you know it, you're in the business. Everybody else, because you didn't invite people to share, like, what it is that
Share the load. Really?
they want to be
Yeah.
doing or that they want
Yeah.
to be responsible for. I love the perspective of what everything shifted in my life when I made things more about being responsible versus having to do it. So in my home, there are things I'm responsible for, but I'm not doing it. Like, I'm responsible for making sure that the house gets cleaned, but I'm currently not doing it.
Same.
And okay, I might be
Same.
inviting others to do it. Okay. Same thing in the business. People
Yeah.
might want to be responsible for things that they aren't even necessarily doing, but they, bring ideas about automation to do it, or they
Right.
bring,
Right.
they go, "Hey, can I have like this little budget to hire, someone on Upwork to help get this project done or whatever." But the fastest way to limit your business and also build up a lot of resentment is to just go about giving everyone the things that you actually got into business to do.
Yes. It's so interesting you say that because I'm literally just in the midst of saying, I can't do all these things. And I'm strategically starting to offload the things that I don't feel passionate about doing, right? Or that doesn't need my touch in doing. And, I think that that's something that Jill and I have talked a lot about, in terms of what does give us fulfillment, what does make us feel aligned in our business, and then what are the things that other individuals can have an opportunity at doing, can help them grow doing. Again, if you're not raising other people up simultaneously, what are we really doing this for, right? We want to make sure that people have the avenue to grow and find their own find their own center, find their own passion, find their own purpose. And that's the beauty of being in business, is that you really get to have that experience with other individuals, and community. So
What are some things that you do? We talked a lot about dropping in from the logical brain to your body and how that connects spiritually. But what are some things that you do to connect to the divine or to to that connection, what that looks like? I know that Molly and I both have a recovery background. We've talked about spirituality in different episodes and kind of what that means and some of our practices. But I think it means different things to different people. So I'd be interested to know like what you do on a regular basis to kind of center yourself and signs that like you need to practice certain things because maybe you are out of alignment, what that looks like.
Yeah. Um, I twerk. Listen, you asked. The world would be a lot better if more women were twerking.
There we go. She said it.
wait, I need more clarity on this. Are
Yeah.
you going to a twerk class?
I've actually taught twerk shops before. Um,
I need to come to one.
I have. I haven't done one in a while. It's been like probably 4 or 5 years since I did one. But okay, there's actually like a spiritual technology behind what I'm saying. Also, I will say psychology is now finally catching up that dance
Yeah.
is like the most effective medicine
To move energy through your body,
to
100%.
overcome depression,
Yeah.
to work through anxiety, to it's essentially to help you come into alignment. Many of
Mhm.
these things that we experience from a spiritual perspective is um, a symptom of being out of alignment because we are either over indexing on the mind or we are not allowing ourselves to connect with the things that give us joy enough. Maybe we have judgment, like, we are constantly focused on the thing that makes us money and we don't do the things that actually give us life
Mm.
because they don't make us money,
Mm, that's
right?
a real thing.
Yeah,
Most people are doing
truly.
that. And also falling into the trap of, well, if I want to do that, then I have to monetize it. And then for some activities, it
Then it
actually,
becomes not joyful.
right. Then it's like, it just kills it. It's why I don't, I have actually danced as like a professional entertainer when I was a teenager. I worked for a DJ company and I was basically like a hype dancer situation, but I'm not like a professionally trained dancer.
So we
But
know when you start twerking for money that's you are out of alignment. We're gonna
I'm not saying that being that
right. If
twerking
you start monetizing it, it's like
for me,
maybe you
for me,
maybe it's not.
I do sometimes integrate it in like a retreat though. Uh, so that does happen. But
So
twerking,
what's the spiritual connection
the
to
spiritual
that?
connection specifically around twerking for women is that our connection to the divine is actually in our body and it starts low. It starts in what would be called like the root chakra
Your feminine
moving
energy,
forward. The
people.
feminine
This is what we're
energy is like
talking about.
so you're getting grounded and connecting with the earth, especially if you put your bare feet on the ground, even better. And it's the movement of the hips.
Mm,
So not just twerking, it could also be belly dancing. It could be,
right.
anything that's like really in your body helps with that. And so many women, like we are holding a lot of trauma, a lot of our emotion, our leftover energy in the hips. And moving them, to me, from my perspective, is more powerful than meditation, especially for women. Like, I think that meditation can be very helpful, can be very beneficial, especially for men. But I personally find that women need to move and be moving
Mm.
regularly and from a place of joy, not forcing the movement. Um, So that can look like, it doesn't have to be this like choreographed thing that you're doing. That dropping into the body, moving the hips can actually start to awaken the spirit in you.
Well,
The
that's why
other
you hear a lot of times though women doing yoga or some like hip work. But I bring yoga up because I've heard several women tell me about this where they start crying when they're
Or
doing hip
breath work when they're breathing
but a
through.
lot of times I find it's when you're in certain poses where you're
Mhm,
holding it around your hips, stuff with your
mhm,
hips.
mhm.
Yep.
Which from as a trauma therapist, when you talk about, Vander Kolk's work around the body keeps score and all these things, I mean, there is, you want the data and the research. Well, there's a ton of data and research around women and trauma and where we hold that and how disease and all that stuff happens to our feminine parts. Like
Yep.
that's where we hold the trauma and it manifests in these ways. So what you're saying, it's one of those things where the feminine kind of logic, I'll say, in the spiritual realm is like some of these things, well, how does A plus B equal C? And it's like, but we have the evidence. I think as a trauma therapist, I just came from a really big conference where we talked a lot about this. It's like we want all the evidence of like why these things matter. And it's like, but we have enough anecdotal, even if it's just if you look way back in ancient times where some of these rituals started, there's a reason why they did it. And they didn't need the research for it. And they
And
didn't need
I mean, I
books
would
and all the data, right? They did it because it felt good and they felt good afterwards and it made sense.
well, I would go one step further into just saying explore it, right? If you do this a few times, right? dance a few times in your kitchen or in your bathroom or wherever it is, right? If you feel, confused about doing it in a setting with your partner or anybody else in the home, and start to see, like, do you feel 1% better than you did before, right? We're asking for subtle shifts in your body and in your energy to be able to show up a little bit differently, right? So, I mean, I'm a big supporter of it. I should be 100% doing it more. And I, competed in dance most of my life. And I will tell you, when I think about connection and community, and I think about the strongest connection and community I had in my life was with the women that I danced with. Still to
Yes.
this day, 20 years later.
Yeah.
And it's not because it was because we moved energy,
Yes.
period, together in community.
Even amongst, people that you don't know,
Yeah.
one of the fastest ways to build connection is through moving together, is through, actually doing something together that um allows you to just drop into your body. And for most of us, because we are like afraid of, well, am I on beat?
Do I look weird?
Do I
Right.
look
Yeah.
good? Some of my favorite dancers are people who just are terrible dancers, but they're just like,
But they own it. They
they're
own
just
it.
going
Yeah.
for it. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
that's what I want to see. So I think it's about, to your point, like, give yourself permission to experiment
Yes. Our permission
and
slip, guys.
like, and play.
Mhm.
The other thing that for me is a big one is, like, I sing, and sometimes, well, I have an issue right now where I've been like binge singing, which is not good. Um, but to your question, Jill, about, when do you know that you're not in alignment, right? You know that you're not in alignment when you are consistently, most of the time, either living in the past, so spending your time in remembrance about things that happened in the past, or constantly in the future, constantly ruminating, worrying, strategizing, etc., about the future, and very little of your time actually being here, like literally being in this moment. I would say that most people are probably not in alignment. The other piece is, if you notice a difficulty being your true self. So noticing in what areas you are struggling with being yourself. Another area is paying attention to your energy, right? How much of your day are you spending in activities, in things that are constantly draining your energy? And are there other ways that you can make space for the things that give you energy, even if they aren't like, if there's not an immediate ROI? Well, I'm going to do that thing and I'm going to make $1,000, right? It's a much more subtle thing. But most of us, if we just take a minute to sit and be with ourselves, and a short time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we just ask, where do I feel misaligned? Where do I feel like I am having to force things to happen? Where am I constantly pouring energy in, but it doesn't feel like I'm getting a an a, a an equal amount of energy exchange back? And most of us will pretty quickly be able to tell where we're misaligned. Most of us know. Most of us are just like in denial,
Right.
about
So
Yeah.
it.
true.
That makes sense.
Well, going back to, because each week on each episode we do give a permission slip. So going back to your permission slip, if you want to just give it to the listeners one more time so they can really soak it up, what would you again, it's a suggestion, it's permission, it's allowing people to keep it top of mind. What would you want to provide to the listeners?
I think the permission slip that is most important is to see your life as a laboratory of experimentation,
Mm,
that you can question, that you can challenge the ways that you're doing things, the way that you see yourself, the way that you think things should be or have to be, and experiment with what would it look like if I allowed myself to be this other side of me? What would it look like if I allowed my marriage to look like this, perhaps unconventional way? And be open to the fact that certain things might actually be aligned for you that are not the pre-prescribed box that you're supposed to fit in, and that when you allow your life to reflect that, really incredible things can happen.
I love that.
thank you.
Well, this has been great. And where can everybody find you? I know you're on Instagram. I mentioned that in the beginning, but anywhere else you want to mention?
Yeah, so these days I am, of course, on Instagram at the Royal Shaman, and my podcast, which is currently Euphoric Evolution. There will probably be a rebrand coming soon because I'm leaning more in the conscious business space. And I'm going to be honest, I'm in a phase of gatekeeping. So I am going to be putting less out publicly and more behind the scenes. So you can also join my email list, which is like the primary way to get information from me on my website at theroyalshaman.com.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much,
Thank you
Makhosi. It
so
was
much.
wonderful hearing you, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.